Here we go. Hello guys, and welcome to my updated build video for the Magicka Sorcerer pet build. Now, this build has been worked on a number of times by myself. I've taken a lot of ideas I've seen friends in the game play around with and concepts, and I've asked them for advice to make a working pet build, because the only pet build user I know is probably Jacane, so she's offered me a lot of advice on how to piece together skills. And I've played a lot around with the sets to see what I personally like, the way we build it all together. And I really am happy with this build. I've got a couple of clips that I'll be uploading later today. But in terms of the build, we are using straight away for food the Witch Mother's Potent Brew. This is so good for Magicka. If you have enough stam regen or enough max stam, use this food. It's such a sexy food. So bang that on for the recovery and the max Magicka and health. Very, very handy food for that. And potion-wise, Essence of Spell Power. We are then using on the armor 5 Necro. Now, I've changed these up. These are now all impen. We're using 5 all on the armor, and then on the top we are using 2 Shadow Ren. Now, I have bad traits since they're purple. I've got reinforced medium shoulders. Again, impen, you're looking at that. Maybe you're looking for divines potentially. I guess would be okay. I prefer to just stack up maximum impen for when your shields are down, because to be honest, most other shields are pretty useless. Or you could infuse your big pieces and impen your smalls. Shadow Ren gives you magical recovery on the 2-piece, and then on the on the 1-piece, and on the 2-piece you get a Clown Fear. Now this Clown Fear is up pretty much 100% of the time in a fight. Honestly, it's up so often because the cooldown starts when it ends. It's very, very good, and it's doing pretty reasonable damage. I mean, it says 3.3k light attacks, but actually even has a heavy attack that it sometimes does that hits pretty decent, and it's a lot of added pressure, especially when you consider how many pets you have up at a time. It also puts Minor Maim on, which the Sorcerer does not have on its class. That Minor Maim is very good for reducing your opponent's damage, especially in a 1 versus 1 high damage build. Necro, obviously, if you don't know, is Magicka, and then when you have a pet active, you gain 4k Magicka. Very, very sexy stats for a pet build, which is probably the reason I built pet in the first place. Free Willpower and the Jewelry, those are 1 Stamina Recovery enchant to make sure we have enough there, and then 2 Spell Damage. The reason we have that Stamina Recovery is our max stam is a little low, so that recovery is very, very game-changing for us for survivability. Finally, we're running the Maelstrom Lightning Staff and Master Inferno Staff. To be honest, it doesn't matter how you piece this together, Maelstrom or Master. Master is going to give you more survivability, and it's still going to give some damage because you're getting more shield dice. The Maelstrom Staff will give you less survivability but more damage because it's more spell damage overall. So it's a fine balance. It depends what you like. With those, you can also run a poison because you still get the spell damage and Magicka. You just don't get the bonus enchant. So we're running the damage health one for extra pressure. That would actually be on my main DPS bar. I'm just a little low on them. And then hindrance on the back bar for a massive snare. Both of these are pretty strong. I'm not a big fan of poisons, but it's not the cancerous ones. If you really want to be cancerous, you can run the cost increase, but I'm not about that life. These are respectable poisons in my opinion compared to what there is out there. Obviously, it's still very strong. If we go into the stats, we are running 45k Magicka, 24k health, and 10k stamina with 2.1k unbuffed spell damage, 1.9k unbuffed magic recovery, and 935 stam recovery, which is pretty damn decent on the recovery for stam. So you don't have to worry about your stam pool too much. Just don't block, don't roll dodge. That's my phone. Just basically manage it for that. Crit resist is obviously through the roof. On the other bar, we're losing some of that Magicka for a bit more spell damage. It's up to you how you piece those two together. It really doesn't matter which way you go with those, but the stats are very, very nice. In terms of the Mundus, we are using the Atronach, and we are a Vampire again to amp that stam recovery up as high as we can to deal with the use of this food. Now let's go on to the skills. So on the skills, we are using on our main bar, that's right, our main bar, we are using the Twilight Matriarch. This is a very, very, very huge dot. People underestimate how good the pets actually are. This thing is hitting somewhere between 1.5k and 3k light attacks constantly, every second, permanently until it dies. So that is a huge dot. That's there forever. I mean, it's the biggest dot in the game if you think about it, because it's always there. It's good to have, and it's also a very, very huge heal. It's essentially Breath of Life for sorcerers. So it's a very strong skill. It does die easily, so you've got to manage your shields, and there is currently a bug where proc sets will insta-kill that pet. That bit sucks. You've got to kind of learn how to fight against that, which is not easy. You've got to really manage how to resummon it. But it is an excellent skill. I can't sacrifice it. As much as I would like to run Elemental Drain and Heal Ward instead, I think even with a bug, I like this pet too much to not use. Other pet, as per usual, is the Volatile Familiar. This has a huge damaging pulse. This pulse does 4.7k, but that will be a lot higher, as you'll see in a second. Every 2 seconds for 4 seconds. That actually also does it on the initial cast as well. It is a massive damaging ability. This hits as hard as a Crushing Shock, basically. It's permanently there once it's amped up, so it's a lot of damage to stack in. When you get a pet, a frag, and a Crushing Shock off, or an ultimate, anything in there in the same second, as well as the Twilight and the Shadow Ren hitting, you're doing huge pressure. We're then using Crushing Shock. Either morph for this is fine. I really like the Interrupt morph, and the main reason I use that is for Stamina Sorcerers, because obviously Interrupt and Dark Deal can be tough. This is a great way to get around that, so I really like this morph, even though the extra damage would obviously be pretty cool. It's up to you what you take. Both are fine, though. Frags, I mean, you want to use obviously you don't want to use Crystal Blast, that's a pile of shit, so you want to use the Prop Frag, that's your main burst. You want to time that with your Curse Explosion, and a Scamp Synergy, and a Twilight. Try to keep them all mentally in your head. It's not an easy build to play, okay? We're then running Harder Mort as our main shield. That's a huge size shield, as you can see, 10k plus, and 33% on ourselves. So this is doing almost 14k shield for ourselves already. That is huge. I'll come on to the ultimate in a sec. On the other bar, we are using Streak. That's for mobility, a nice CC, and it's great to procure passives and things like that. It's a very nice skill to have. It's really essential open mod. I love it too much. Harness Magicka, again, that's just another damage shield. It also gives you a bit more sustain against Magicka builds. It's nice to have two shields. So when you're under a lot of pressure, you want to run one shield, swap bar, run the other. You want to keep those shields up at all times and only apply pressure when shields are up, because otherwise you're going to get yourself fucked over. So make sure you're keeping those up. Again, we have to run the pets because they're toggles. Honestly, it's still worth it in my opinion. They're very, very strong and underestimated. Our last skill, however, has changed along with some of the sets, as you would have seen. And that is now Deadric Prey, which is the other morph of this. It does the same amount of damage, except that it takes longer to burst. It's 2.5 seconds longer. So Deadric, Velocious Curse takes 3.5 seconds to explode. This one takes 6 seconds. However, what it does do is it increases the pet damage by 55%, which is huge. If you consider how hard this scamp is hitting, 55% more is making that absolutely ridiculous damage. The Twilight is getting amped. I don't know whether it amps the Shadow End, but I would assume it would. I mean, that's just so powerful. So it's very, very, very strong ability with pet build. I've tried both, and I instantly favored this one after trying it for one go. So I'm definitely in favor of this skill. A lot of people criticize it. In the end, you're still getting the same burst, right? It doesn't matter how fast you hit with that curse. You're still going to time it with your main frag and that sort of stuff. So you can also think of it this way. It gives you more time to build things up, because you've got to manage to get that Scamp Synergy, a frag, and ultimate, rather than just a frag and a Fury. It's a little more to get into that. So the extra seconds do also help, but it's mostly there to amp the pet damage. It is so much damage. We're then running Eye of the Storm. I mean, honestly, this ultimate needs a huge nerf. It's very, very overpowered, but in the end, I'm running it because I don't have Meteor. I don't have much to say on that. Personally, I like it nerf, but yeah. Then we're running Energy Overload. Now, this has a back bar. The back bar only has one extra skill, which I'll see in a sec. But actually, the main reason we use this is for Magicka Sustain. If we get poisoned, the Magicka we get from the light attack from this is very, very helpful in keeping our sustain up. A number of times I've been saved by using this to get Magicka back. It's not a huge amount, but honestly, I really, really, really find it handy. Having that overload for the extra Magicka is very, very useful. And then on the overload bar, the only extra skill you will see, we're running Streak for mobility. Again, we need to move around whilst we're in that in case we do. One shield, the biggest shield, of course. Both our pets as they desummon. And then we're running Defensive Rune. This basically, you want to precast this before you're riding anywhere, anything like that. If anyone hits you, it's going to CC them. But I've been running this one a while. It's a nice skill to have on the overload bar. You don't really use it that much in an open fight because the scamp CC so much, but it's nice to prevent a gank. Last but not least, I think, he says carefully, if anyone in the chat knows, warn me, is the champion point tree. So we are using 100 in Magician for reducing the cost. They're obviously important. We're running shield stack build. Reduced cost is always going to win out. We're then using 65 in Arcanist and 6 in Mooncraft for recovery there, and a bit in stamina recovery, because in the end you only put a few points in, you're getting a lot of gain, so it's worth it. 16 in Tumbling. I had 22 there before, but I haven't really dodged that much. You could even take some more of that for magic recovery if you are lacking. No convert on the third bar. No, I don't need it, Chronic, honestly. We're then running 100 in Elemental Expert for the max damage on the Magicka. 65 in Spell Erosion to deal with a heavy armor build. It gives us a lot more penetration. Our penetration is pretty high anyway. Obviously running Sharpened. We got this. That's plenty. I mean, in the end, your damage is so high, you're not going to... Trust me, you're not going to worry about damage. If you learn how to use pets effectively, you're not going to worry about damage. 22 in Elfborn for crits. That also affects our heals, of course, from our pets. That's kind of handy. There's no point in having dots. We don't have any dots on there. It would amp Curse a bit, but I don't really know if it's worth it, honestly. I've kind of favoured against it. I may put some in the future, but I don't know. 34 in Crit Resist. That is kind of handy. It's not essential. You could put those elsewhere if you wanted them, for example, in here. In fact, I'm going to do that now. Do I have the gold on me? I don't think I do. Fuck it, we can do that again some other time. 25 in Hardy, 22 in Elemental Fennec. You could move some of those over there, right? So that could definitely move. You could get that down as low as about 21, I guess. You only really need 2k crit resist, and with this amount, you're never going to need more. 6 in fixed skin to reduce the dot damage, 25 and 22 there for physical and magic damage, and then 100 in bastion to amp our shield size as high as possible. We have very high magicka. Make the most of that magicka, right? I think I've covered everything to do with the build. I just want to quickly explain how to use pets, because it's something I don't know how you do it on consoles, by the way. I'm going to put that out. It's something that you have to learn how to do effectively. It's not an easy build to play. In fact, it's one of the hardest builds to play in the game, I would guess. You need to set a key. So if I quickly go to my controls, we can go down and we can go down to this thing here. Command pet. You can set a key there. So right now it's Y. If I was to hold Y and then left click, what that will do is it will send my pet to attack them. If I'm holding Y and right click, it will bring them back to us. And last thing I need to make sure I do with this pet here, the Scamp, is activate the synergy. So if I recast him, you'll see him do a pulse around him. That's the thing to do the damage. You want to keep that up 100% of the time in the fight. I think I've covered everything in the build. I could be wrong. I'll come up with a name later. We'll pretend I never did that. But guys, thank you very much for the build. Rest in, Wilson. Thank you for the donation, Wilson. I should have turned alerts off.
Hi YouTube. Hi Mum.
Hello Wilson. Thank you for that. Thank you guys for watching the build video. I think that's covered everything. Take care guys, and I wish you the best making the build. It's a pretty cheap one to get together. It's a little different to the others. But it's a tough one to play. So try learn it. If you have any questions, as always, ask me in the description below and I will do my best. But there you go guys. Wilson is going to be in the video. You're famous, Wilson. To about 20 people. Thank you very much for watching guys, and that will do for the build video.